Okay, hi everybody. It is Thursday, October 2nd, 2025, and today 3i Atlas is still inside of the Yom Kippur alignment. And let me just pull that up here. And today's talk is going to be about making the invisible visible. And it comes from my favorite saying, actually, in the Gospel of Thomas, in verse 5. Jesus says, "Recognize what's plain and in your sight, and that which is hidden from you will be revealed to you." And I mean, that's a deep subject because we only see from a limited color spectrum from the color red to the color violet in the rainbow spectrum. And below the color red, we get into infrared, which has many bands, and then you get down into the, high frequency radio spectrum, and then you get into the low frequency radio spectrum, and then you get into very, very low frequencies. And those low frequencies are actually what operate, like the human brain waves that transmit from our brain are electromagnetic waves. And electromagnetic waves follow a very, very simple formula. If you take the speed of light divided by the frequency, and the way you do that is, let's say you resolve the speed of light in a unit of measure. For example, I can resolve the speed of light in inches, and then divided by the frequency. So you could take a human theta wave, and a human theta wave is where we all dream. And in fact, the frequency of the Earth is actually between 7.48 hertz as a wavelength, and 7.83 hertz is the Tesla Schumann resonance, which is slightly different. So the Schumann resonance uses the circumference of the Earth as a wavelength, and therefore it actually is the first response wave. It's driven by lightning strikes, so it's not exactly the frequency of the wavelength of the Earth, but it's very close. Why this is important is when a human is in the upper theta state equal to the wavelength of the Earth, we experience rapid eye movement and we dream. And so we're dreaming in theta, but you have to understand the size of a human brainwave at that wavelength is the size of the Earth itself. So our brains, in fact, no scientist has ever resolved this. Has ever, yes, we can measure the frequency of the brain by connecting electrodes to the skull, and we can look at somebody's brainwave activity. But what they don't understand is that because we can't see the actual brainwave, which is the size of the Earth, which means the human organism is both attached to these waves and depends on these waves. But these waves are, I would like to kind of give the analogy of a, fisherman or woman who's casting out a net, and the net is part of them, which is the wave. And the wave of a human brainwave in theta is as big as Earth, which means individually it's extremely weak at that size. We are as big as the Earth. So that's really hard to grasp, but you cannot see it. And you tell yourself, I can't see it, so it can't be real. This is why in the Gospel of Thomas, recognize what is plain and in your sight, and then that which is hidden from you will be revealed to you, which says if you become really aware, you're going to start to experience the invisible. And 3i Atlas is about to hit its bullseye target about the 20th to the 24th of October. Mathematically is where I've calculated at, which is the 591 number that I've been talking about for a few years now. And of course, the 591 number builds the entire hyperdimensional solar system. And the hyperdimensional solar system, which I'll go over here again, the more times you go over something, I mean, redundancy and repetition is really the secret to really getting it. Really getting it. And so when you repeat something over and over and over again, you start to really get it. Okay, so here it is. Remember what I'm talking about invisibility, because the mathematics of my 591 number here in the middle of my graphic, which is the number of days it was after my wife, Crystal Sereda, called out my name, and 591 divided by the golden ratio gives me the orbit of Earth, 365.256 days, and divided by the old golden ratio again gives me the orbit of Venus, divided by the golden ratio again gives me an invisible position of 139.51 days, which lines up to the miracle of the sun at Fatima, the Ascension Day of Jesus, Buddha's birthday, and even St. Francis's Ascension Day actually lines up to this date. Divided by the golden ratio again gives me another invisible position for the eighth level of heaven, the cherubim, divided by the golden ratio again gives me seraphim, divided by the golden ratio again gives me Vulcan. And Vulcan is the planet that eluded astronomers in the early 19th century at the Paris Observatory in France. Urbain Le Verrier is under the direction and the auspices of Francois Argot, the director of the Paris Observatory, tells him to observe Mercury's transits across the sun. And he accidentally discovers another planet. He knows it's not a sunspot, and it has an orbit of approximately 20 days. And of course, it vanishes. A whole planet vanishes. So Vulcan becomes a hypothetical planet. But it fits perfectly into my mathematical algorithm. And this algorithm, and the way you understand the golden ratio, is that the golden ratio, which forms the Fibonacci spiral that we see everywhere in nature, from the top of a human head and the hairline of the human head, studies done at Johns Hopkins University measuring from the bridge of the nose to the soft spot on the head to the back of the neck were well within, in most human subjects, golden ratio, with always with a little bit of tolerance. You're never going to see 100%. And the spiraling arms of the Milky Way galaxy showing the golden ratio, seashells, if I have one around here, all showing how this spiral is built, means that these upper numbers that are not visible, and that 3i Atlas is heading towards this 591 position as its bullseye, is telling us exactly what the Gospel of Thomas is telling us, is to look at the invisible. And in fact, one of the greatest lessons a human being can learn in their life is, one, yes, to recognize what's visible. And yes, I can touch this wall, but how do you measure spirit? How do you measure the birth of a human being as a soul? And when we die, where do we go to next? We go to an invisible place. And we're told that this invisible place, somewhere within that, is where life after death exists. This is where science cannot believe in life after death because it can't touch it like I can touch this wall. So it says it can't be there. But this mathematical algorithm that I've decoded, which even Bode's law could not decode, the algorithm for the orbits of the planets in the solar system, has solved the riddle, which is a thousands of year old riddle. Is what is the algorithm and the harmonic ratios to the orbits of the planets in the solar system? And the golden ratio doesn't work unless you include these 9 extra orbits of these upper 9 planets, which the poet Dante clearly saw in his Paradiso. So the whole purpose of the human journey is to understand that we came from an invisible place. We eventually learn how to perceive that which is not visible, which is the feelings that extend beyond the body into what we call the field. And and I just proved to you in the beginning, and let me show you this. Let me show you this, because if you take a calculator, I'm going to show you, okay, the speed of light in inches. I'm going to show you how this works. I mean, this is one of the simplest ways to calculate a frequency. So you really understand how frequencies are actually calculated, right? So you take just looking for my speed of light in inches. Speed of light in inches. Here it is. So let's just do this. Get my calculator on the screen. You can do this with me. I mean, if you really care, if you really want to learn how frequencies are calculated, get out your calculator. And when you get this number, the speed of light in inches, this is very accurate. This is a very accurate speed of light measurement in inches. Where's my calculator again? That's the speed of light in inches. Okay, so let's just say your brain is in theta. So let's just put you at 7.5 hertz divided by 7.5 hertz. That's the wavelength of your brain waves. These brain waves are attached to your head. They're part of you. That's how huge it is in inches. So we'll divide that by 12 to see how many feet that is, right? And we'll divide that by 5,280 feet per mile. Your brainwave in theta is 24,837.652 miles. That's the circumference of the Earth. But this isn't the Earth itself. This is your brain. Now, what scientists don't know is because they can't see these waves, they don't know whether the brain is harmonizing with the frequencies of the Earth or it's producing the wave itself. And the way you would argue that is no two human brains are at the same time. Let's say you took a whole bunch of people who are sleeping and they're all in the theta state, and which is where we dream. The deepest part of the human brain is even a huger wavelength, which is delta waves. They're enormous. They're way bigger than Earth. So when you get into delta, you're way bigger than Earth. Part of you is like a fishing net out there gathering data and information. And part of you is experiencing this. And I don't know why science thinks they can argue this, because the the truth is you can't separate the particle from the wave in quantum mechanics. And the moment if I terminate a person's brain waves, they're dead. They will die. The human heart wave, which has a greater amplitude than the human brain wave, measured at very close to 1 wave per second. So when a heart is at rest, it's at 60 beats a minute. So that's 1 second, 1 wave per second. So it has a frequency of 1. And I'm going to show you how big a 1 frequency is here too. So our brain in delta is this big. And again, it's inseparable from you, because if you terminate that wave, you will die. In fact, in quantum mechanics, it was Paul Dirac who said the wave is the sole governing agency of the particle, not the other way around. The particle is not the sole governing agency of the wave. The wave governs the particle. So if you terminate the brain wave, the brain dies. Now, we have 5 major categories of brain waves. And when we're awake and we're conscious, we're going to go into alpha waves. And those will shrink smaller, but they're still really huge. They're still really huge waves. And then you go into beta and then gamma waves. And those waves start to get about the size of the moon. So we are actually very huge. And a meditator actually, and a person who, you don't even have to be a meditator, you just have to be really quiet and be really aware. And you can start to feel that a part of you doesn't end at the surface of the skin, it's expanding out into the field. So if I take the circumference of the Earth and you recognize that you're that big, you have the ability to sense things within that size of that field that you are. So now let's do the same thing. Now I'm going to divide this by a frequency of 1. Guess what I'm going to get? The same number. So that's a heart wave. In fact, when a human brain wave is at 1 hertz, 1 wave per second, we're the same size. So if I divide that by 12 inches per foot, divide that by 5,280 feet per mile, in delta, we're 186,282 miles. Divide that by pi, it would be a sphere 59,000 miles in diameter. That's way bigger than the Earth. It's way bigger than the Earth. Now, the thing about delta waves, we actually have all of these waves going on all the time in our body. And the energy distribution, depending on the state we're in, shifts more energy or less energy into these different waves. So your delta waves are operating all the time. Those are huge waves. What researchers know is that when humans are asleep, and when babies are sleeping especially, their delta wave gets really big. And the healing part of the brain is always been documented in medical studies, where we actually heal from anything from emotional trauma to physical illnesses, is when we're in deep theta and delta. But most humans are not aware in delta. I had my brain waves measured in Sedona, Arizona years ago, meditating under this juniper tree by this brainwave mapper. And he said my delta waves were huge. And he said, you should basically be, what they know about brain waves is that with delta waves that big, I should be in trouble, because you can't have delta waves that big. Delta waves are the most powerful. And I said, look, I'm in control of this. So I just shifted my awareness from my head into my heart, and my delta waves got bigger. And then when I shift my energy awareness from my heart into my head, my delta waves got smaller, and then my theta and alpha got bigger. So it seems like the human system only has a certain amount of energy, and it distributes it into these different categories depending on what we're doing and what we're focused on. And what we're focused on is what we're aware of. But when you start to enter deep states of meditation, you go into these super fields that are so big. And that's where, when we come into these models, I'm just going to show you the bullseye target again of 3i Atlas. And you start to understand what's going on is, why would this proven to be intelligent visitor, if you look up today and you look up at the sun and you look down and to the left of the sun, you're going to see Mars. And 3i Atlas is at Mars right now. It's right there. And so it's way over here with my little X's, and this outer red circle. Mars will orbit around the sun in 686.98 Earth days. All measurements are in Earth day time. And around the 20th to the 24th of October, it will cross extremely close to my hyperdimensional orbit of invisible planet 591. So this is how we evolve as a species. 3i Atlas, whether it does anything physical in the solar system, we don't know. But it's teaching us. As I've already demonstrated, it crosses all the orbits of all the planets on precise religious state alignments. It is Yom Kippur right now at 10:30 in the morning Pacific time on October the 2nd, 2025. We're still in Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur will end later today, which is a very, very notable religious date when Moses receives the second set of 10 commandments, and from his God who has landed on the earth, who is an invisible being. Note, invisible, Nobody's ever described God, the God of the Israelites and the Hebrews. Nobody's ever described what this being looks like, this super being. Maybe the prophet Ezekiel has given us an incredible description, probably the only one, and maybe Enoch. We don't know who this radiant being sitting on a throne made of sapphire is inside the wheels within the wheels of Ezekiel's craft. But it might be a prophet. It might, we don't really know because the face of the being is too bright to look at and too powerful. But the point is, this being who is revered as God, this date that we're in right now, the 3i Atlas has met with Mars. So let me go back to that, because we're going to go deep into the invisible in today's talk. Because to make what is invisible visible is the evolution of the species. And if I can use math as a blind man to see 9 extra planets through a number given to me by an invisible person who is my wife, who died August 9th and 2021, and 591 days later is 1.618, the golden ratio years later, which is phenomenal. Should be a huge wake-up call there. So essentially, we are being taught a lesson right now by 3i Atlas that we need to learn. The human species is ready to learn, because what did 2 Peter 3:13 say? We have to look for new heavens and a new earth. Look. That means you have to become aware. So here we are. This is October 2nd. This is my model. We got a lot of visitors in this model right now. Our NEO FA22 is still with us next to Earth outside the orbit of the moon. It's very close to us. It's actually been removed from the sky live, which I find highly dubious. I don't know why they removed it. If I try today, let me try again. 2025 FA 22. So it's still categorized, but when I click on it, its orbit is gone. I don't know why they took it out. It's the size of a Manhattan skyscraper, so where my little hand is here is just outside of the orbit of the Earth. And of course, we can see our 2 comet swans, R2 swan and F2 swan. And then we've got K1 Atlas, Mercury, Mars, and 3i Atlas in this alignment. And we've got 2025 A6 Lemon. All of this is inside the orbit of, you see, here's Mars, the orbit of Mars. From the top, looking down, we're inside the orbit of Mars. That's where all these things are, right? K1 Atlas is hard to believe. It's that close. It's inside the, it looks like it's inside the orbit of Mercury. You see this purple trajectory here? But if I go 3-dimensionally, yep, it's below Mercury, but it's in the inner solar system. So we have a lot going on in the inner solar system. And we look at 3i Atlas to Mars here, when it's going to hit my hyperdimensional, invisible, magical number that builds 9 invisible planets of the angels and the 9 visible spheres that are visible to us, So watch what happens when we get to the 11th, 12th, 13th of October. You have to turn this in 3 dimensions, you see? Which is the anniversary of the miracle of the sun at Fatima. It's crossed the inside of the orbit of Mars. You see that? If I go up here, so the miracle of the sun at Fatima anniversary date, it's very, very magical. We're not at 591 yet, but when I get to about the 20th of October, I'm really close, which is a simple mathematical ratio calculation between the sun, my mathematical calculation to the orbit of Earth, Venus, and my 591 position is right about here. And it's going to hold that position for about that many days. And then it's going to go inside. This here, it's inside of it. Now look what it did here on the 3rd to the 4th of November. It's paired with Venus, right? Again, the odds of Venus being paired with it and being paired with Mars, millions against it if this visitor doesn't know what it's doing. Because Venus could be here, it could be way over here, it could be on the other side, it could be at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, but it's not. It's right here. It's paired. Which means, excuse me, that in the harmony of the order, harmony meaning in harmony with, it has some type of business or intentional purpose that it's doing with Mars and Venus. It might just be teaching us, because it's going to do the same thing with Jupiter in the spring. Now, at this point here, Christmas, let's go to Christmas. Don't let me forget Christmas. The 20th of December is its closest to Earth according to Loeb's data. Some people are saying the 19th. But you'll notice that, watch Earth. As I click, Earth is getting closer. 3i Atlas is getting further away. Click it again, Earth is getting closer, 3i Atlas is getting away. So it's holding an equilibrium in its distance. But when we get to December 25th, off of its baseline here, it is at Great Pyramid angle from Earth, which again is perfectly timed to Christmas Day in the Western churches. Now, I'm going to add 16 Psyche, which is the most valuable asset in the solar system. There it is, 16 Psyche, this purple line here. And now I'm going to keep going to Orthodox Christmas, which is January the 7th and the 8th. You see how close it is to the orbit of 16 Psyche? And that's the Orthodox Church calendar. In Egypt, they celebrate it on the 8th of January, and the rest of the Orthodox the 7th of January. So then we're going to go all the way to Jupiter, and on the 16th of March, 16th of March is its closest position to Jupiter, which happens to be the night of power in Islam, which is the day the Archangel Gabriel started reciting the Quran to Muhammad. So this is really important because when you have somebody like the Prophet of Islam stating he's seeing an invisible being, an angel, that is not visible to others, you have to understand that an entire religion is based on the resurrection of Christ, whose resurrected body is perceived by certain individuals and not others. So you could say you couldn't prove that he was visible to everyone, but he might have been, but we don't know. And you get over 2 billion people today who are congregants of that religion, like 2.3 billion. And in Islam, which is one of the fastest growing, is the fastest growing religion in the world, you have a prophet, the founder of religion, is talking to an invisible angel, Gabriel, reciting the first verses of the Quran on this date. And we can see 3i Atlas is showing us again a harmonic to its closest position to Jupiter, when Congress has been supposedly cooperating with physicist Avi Loeb that the Juno spacecraft on Jupiter is going to intercede and get us phenomenal pictures of 3i Atlas. In fact, we were supposed to get the phenomenal pictures of 3i Atlas yesterday, today, and tomorrow from the Mars HiRISE cameras, and the US government, perfectly timed, closes itself. And Avi Loeb says the closure may affect whether we ever see the photographs taken from the Mars HiRISE cameras. I'm going to show you some news clippings on that. And that the Trump administration signed an executive order with the Pentagon over 2 weeks ago, the new Department of War, that the media no longer has direct access to classified information in the military and NASA. They can't share it with the public, which means we may never see the photographs of 3I Atlas because they're going to be really good, which means we may never see these either. But if I go all the way to the Jupiter crossing, 22nd, 23rd of March, I'm at Easter window. There are many years on this date, it will be Easter. And so therefore, why is that? Because again, you're talking about the celebration of a resurrected person over around 2,000 years ago or more that cannot be proven to be visible to everyone. And that's why my talk today is on the invisible and so forth. So I've already presented all of the planet crossings. But what's interesting to me today now is we're supposed to get, I mean, this is the first time that a verified extraterrestrial visitor, whether you want to call this thing a comet or not, and all the arguments are against it because of the supreme intelligence of what it's doing. Could a rock be this intelligent? Yes, it could. If it's directed by a power that is invisibly intelligent. Think about it. There's no way what I presented mathematically that this thing is not at least governed by an intelligence that recognizes all of our religions, all of them. Because when 3I Atlas continues here and it crosses the orbit of Saturn, July 22nd here is the feast day of Mary Magdalene in the Catholic Church, and July 19th to the 20th is in Egyptian New Year in the old system of Egypt, the ancient system of Egypt. July the 19th and the 20th is Sirius heliacal rising. Their calendar is based on the rising of the brightest star in our sky from Earth, which is the star Sirius, 8.7 light years from Earth. When it returns to that same position each year and pairs with the sun, that's their New Year's Day, which will be July 19th and 20th. So here it is, crossing the orbit of Saturn. This is what I'm saying. It's showing us that it's intelligent by its exactly precisely timed velocity. If it changed its velocity, it won't cross these planets on these windows. It won't do it. And it certainly won't be at Earth. Shoot, I didn't have my screen share up on that last part. So again, this is the crossing here of Saturn. You can see it right here. This is this highlighted red line is the orbit of Saturn, which is Sirius heliacal rising, and the 22nd of July, right there, still within Saturn's orbit, is the feast day of Mary Magdalene. You see, if I turn it on its side, you see, that's Mary Magdalene's feast day, July 22nd. And here's Saturn's position. So it's not pairing with Saturn. It paired with Jupiter, it paired with Venus, and it paired with Mars, and it paired with Earth at Great Pyramid angle, is absolute intelligence. So let's say, because Avi Loeb goes on Fox News yesterday, and he says 3I Atlas might just be a comet. Okay, I mean, was he told to say that? Because it was his hypothesis from the beginning, because of the pairedness of the orbits of the planets, that it had to be intelligent. It had to know what it was doing. But I've gone way beyond his mathematics, way beyond it. But I'm relying on him because I am relying on him because he is brilliant. And he just doesn't acknowledge archaeoastronomy, religious temple, astronomical alignments to temples to planets and stars. He just doesn't acknowledge that. Fine, I understand, because mainstream physicists and scientists can't mix religion with science, but I can. So I've proven the intelligence of it. But let's say in the end, it is a rock or a ball of ice. Then even more profoundly than ever in the history of the world, we have proof that an invisible spirit told a rock made of nickel, because that's what it's made out of, to behave in this perfect harmony of the order is absolute proof of the spirit or the force. Let's call it the force in Star Wars. This what the ancient Greeks in the New Testament, the word for spirit is pneuma, Pneuma, in its original context. And I just took a great course by a university professor, Robin Faith Walsh, on the New Testament, and she's really brilliant. She's very young, enthusiastic, and very, very brilliant. And she really opens your mind into the true understanding of Paul's letters in the Gospels, because Paul speaks in this language of humans inheriting a new body and going to a place in the heavens that is invisible to us, but we don't know where it is. And now we know where it is. We know that the poet Dante in the 14th century, 13th, 14th century, actually had a vision where he's out at the orbit of Neptune and he's being shown these 9 more planets of the angels going all the way back towards the sun, and closest to the sun is the highest position of the highest angelic hierarchy. So of course all that's invisible, but to spirit it's not invisible. To the force it's not invisible. And to mathematics it becomes completely visible, which means we have to look where 3i Atlas is about to piercing the veil of 591, the invisibility. So let's say it goes by uneventful physically. It may do something physical. It really may. Be ready. But do I know it's going to do something physical? Well, it already did. It's here. And it's crossing on these perfect mathematical intervals. And its axial rotational period equaled the age of the prophet Methuselah, the oldest man in the Bible, 969 years. And I built a hyperdimensional solar system model on his number as well, because his number is 1 to the golden ratio from 591. So, and I built that, and I've already presented that. But then another thing happened. An amateur astronomer actually did this. And let me go find this. I have mapped this out. And this amateur astronomer was taking consecutive photographs and turned it into a movie, which was posted on, actually, let me just recapitulate my second model that I built with the axial rotational period of 3 Atlas in minutes was 969.6 minutes. And with that divided by the golden ratio, I got 599.24. Divided by the golden ratio, I got 370.35, which is 98.62% of the orbit of Earth. I got 98.16% the orbit of Venus. I got 141.46 for Thrones. I got 99.38% the orbit of Mercury. And I got Cherub, Seraphim, and I got planet Vulcan's orbit. And when I went out, 969.6 times the golden ratio, repeating, I got the orbit of Ceres. I got angelic powers. I got 94.8%, almost 95% the orbit of Jupiter. And I got 99.94% the orbit of Saturn. That's impressive. That's incredibly impressive. With a number sent to us from 3i Atlas that Avi Loeb, again, refuses to look at. But it's clear that it sent this message. So again, it's confirming my invisible positions. And when I merged my 591 model to the 3i Atlas 969 Methuselah model, I'm calling it, and I calculated the differences in the number of days in the two model, I was left for each planet with Fibonacci sequence. 001. Mercury was a 1. Thrones was a 2. Venus was a 3. Actually, no, Mercury. I have the whole chart of the numbers of the planets. So I have, it's like taking two sheets of paper, putting them together, subtracting the difference in the numbers in the model, and I'm left with Fibonacci's numbers are 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34. It just keeps going. And it turns out all my planets are now this what's called a differential mathematically, and I have the whole article on this on my Medium blog page for people who want to actually look at the article on this, because then I'm going to go into this huge thing that happened with 3i Atlas. Let me just go to my Medium page so I can. So you just got to go to medium.com / the @ symbol David Sereda to see this. And let me just show you on my share screen. There's my Medium page. And you just go to click on 3i Atlas sends Earth the message in the age of Methuselah. And when you see this, you will see the hidden secret numbers in the end to the Fibonacci sequence numbers that separate the two universes. The invisible from the invisible are differentially separated by Fibonacci's numbers. I don't think, you see, here we go. We start with Thrones. 139 to 141 is a 2. And Venus 228, between 225 and 228 is 3. You see? 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, right? So all of our planets, Earth is actually a 5. And 591 is actually an 8. And Methuselah's planet, which is Dominions, is a 13. And Dwarf Planet Ceres is a 21. And Powers, angelic powers, is a 34. Jupiter is a 55, and so on. So those are all Fibonacci's numbers. That is utterly mind-blowing. Utterly, utterly mind-blowing. If anybody, in this audience who listens to this really wants to help me perfect this model, this is next level human. This is the human race understanding that we live in a visible, actually real, hyperdimensional solar system that interfaces and merges with the visible solar system universe periodically. And these events, like the appearing and disappearing of planet Vulcan in the 19th century, and the miracle of the sun at Fatima lines up perfectly to my planet 139.516 perfectly. There were events in history where astronomers were completely eluded, because if they can't get their hands on it and touch it every day and get their telescope on it, it's not happening. And that's incorrect. Because in quantum mechanics, things like this appearing and disappearing happen all the time. For example, the strange quarks in all atoms, and I got to meet Murray Gell-Mann, the discoverer of quarks, a number of times actually. And he's one funny guy. I mean, he's a Nobel laureate in physics. I met him in his office in Santa Fe, and I've met him at the Advanced Physics Corporation in Irvine, California, when I was doing work there with Bogdan Maglich. The strange quarks are in all the atoms in our bodies, and they randomly, with no mathematical algorithm known to mathematics, will leave and come back, and leave and come back. And nobody knows where they go, where they've been. Why do they keep coming back? Because they're going out and they're collecting data in the invisible and making it visible. So this is where we get into the last subject for today, which is when 3i Atlas actually gets photographed carrying with it or opening a window, we don't know. Trying to find, here it is. Okay, this is exciting. This is really exciting. And I've confirmed this. I had the video of this on space weather. And so 3i Atlas is in the center of my circle here, marked by a red dot, and all these other red dots, of which there are 9, in the original video was consistently moving from the bottom of the screen to the top in tandem velocity to 3i Atlas, which means they're either gravitationally bound to 3i Atlas or they're in synchronicity with it, or 3i Atlas is in synchronicity to 9, note the number 9, invisible bodies in the heavens beyond its visibility. The telescope optics at this point, okay, this is a CGE 1400 Celestron telescope, and it is in Pasto, Colombia at the University of Nariño Observatory. So you're looking, the optics are looking at a space smaller than I can even look. So no, we're not looking at satellites, and satellites would be going, they would be streaking by because my exposure is 19 minutes and 10 seconds. This thing is only tracking 3i Atlas. So the stars in the background here are duly noted. The movement, it's not moving very far, but it's moving enough that I can differentiate between the background stars, which are not moving, and because they're so incredibly distant, they're far more distant than 3i Atlas is, because 3i Atlas is near Mars. And these photographs were taken on the 20th of September 2025, so that's quite recent, a couple weeks ago approximately. And so what I did, at first became interested in that they were 9, because of course I have 9 invisible planets in my model. And I don't know if there's a correlation to those or not in this. I don't know. Did 3i Atlas open up a portal to allow the cameras to photograph these 9 extra? I don't like the word object, because object can signify something very small. But the angles I measured between them, like this triangle here on the left, I could put a Great Pyramid in there and fit in there perfectly. And my angles are not 100% accurate, so the Great Pyramid is just a shaving under 52 degrees. And this triangle here, formation here, looks like pretty much an equilateral triangle of 45 degrees off of this baseline. This 70-degree angle is off of this baseline, but it's this triangle here would be a 45 degrees, and 45 degrees is just so organized. I mean, that doesn't look random to me at all. And then this angle here off this baseline is 38 to 39 degrees, which is the complementary angle of the Great Pyramid. So 52 degrees is the complementary to 38 degrees, because 38 and 52 is 90 degrees. So in a quadrant, you have 90 degrees. But this is also the angle of resurrection in Egypt. And the rest of these angles I haven't really resolved yet. But there's coordination here, is what I'm saying. This isn't random. This is verifiable at this observatory in Colombia. So it's possible that 3i Atlas has opened a portal to allow us to see this, because we don't know of any other objects in the solar system that could be identifiable as these 9 extra points. So therefore, we have to say they are absolutely invisible to us. But to this telescope, which is a university quality telescope, they're visible. And I guarantee you that NASA has probably better imagery of these extra 9 than this. So with that, in closing, we go to the case, and again, I've already talked about this in my inner circle, of the Vanishing and Appearing Stars project, the VASCO project, of which Beatrice Villarreal, a very young physicist, has got her hands on incredible data, confirmed, in this case, 9 simultaneously arising and disappearing, she calls them transits, on the 12th of April, 1950, which is one day within Easter Monday for that year, which is incredible because it's Easter. And I showed you what 3i Atlas can do with Easter and Jesus's ascension dates and the planets. And these cases are now being studied because they can't accept the idea that these are whole planets. And initially they proposed that they were stars. How could whole stars disappear from one of the best telescopes in the world? And it's absolutely confirmed this happened. And over a small duration of time, I've read the whole case following this. I've read everything on this because the idea of a whole planet and our star vanishing and appearing and vanishing is consistent with exactly what I'm talking about in my mathematical model and the model of 3i Atlas, Methuselah model, and the 591 to the golden ratio model, that these upper hyperdimensional planets can appear. It's like you're a fish under the water. Somebody drops an object into the water, and momentarily the object is under the water like a piece of wood, and then it goes back up to the surface, pops above the surface, and you can't see it anymore. I think that would be a good analogy. So there's a period of time where these hyperdimensional planets jump into our dimension, and like fish under the water, we see them for a duration in our telescopes, and then they vanish. And then we say, well, we can't confirm that it's there. This happened. Maybe it's a mistake in the telescope, because our consciousness can't get it that we live in a hyperdimensional universe. And finally, we have cases of UFOs that are constantly doing this, constantly peering into our dimension. We don't see them coming beyond the orbit of Jupiter. Here's the case. This was the first case in the September 9th U.S. Congressional UAP UFO hearings with witnesses. Notice it's October 14th, the anniversary of the miracle of the sun at Fatima. This is incredible. And the year is 2003. This red square UFO was seen right off the Vandenberg Air Force Base with incredible witness testimony. And if I take October 14th minus 280 days, which is 2 orbits of my planet 139 times 0.516 times 2 is 280. I will get to January 7th, Orthodox Christmas. So that's the date of this sighting is perfectly in harmony with Orthodox Christmas as a start date in a calendar year, but also January 7th is only 3 days after winter perihelion. Winter perihelion is January the 4th. So we have 2 start dates in the solar system. We have winter solstice, so Western Christmas, winter solstice the 22nd of December plus 3 days is December 25th. And winter perihelion, when the Earth is closest to the sun, is January 4th plus 3 days is January 7th. So we have 2 calendar dates and 2 harmonies in the solar system to calculate the beginning of a new solar year. And this UFO is perfectly in harmony with 2 orbits of my planet 139 in my hyperdimensional model. So the UFOs are exhibiting exactly what I'm telling you. They're trying to tell you mathematically that they come from the angelic hyperdimensional solar system. And unless a person wants to remain blind and say, because I can't see it every day, it's not there, well, go ahead, you can do that. But 2 Peter 3:13 says we have to look for the new heavens and the new earth. We have to become aware. So I say, at the very least, 3i Atlas is teaching us this. It's giving us exactly what I'm trying to give the human race. And yet I find the math incredibly simple compared to even the math my 15-year-old daughter is doing in grade 10 is actually harder than this. It's way harder than this. People, this is simple math. It's really simple math. And if you pay people to do the math, they will understand. If you don't pay them, they won't even try. If I could get help out there, form a think tank and hire really young mathematicians. You don't have to be beyond grade 10 math to do this. You really don't. And to create a think tank to build this, because if we really build this into a structure of learning, we can now think about it, because next level, and I'm going to talk about this next week, I have decoded the frequencies of all these visible and invisible positions in the solar system, which means if I give you that frequency, your brain and your brain waves can attune to that position, just like a radio, and you will start to get downloads of intelligence and a connection to that place. So with that, I'll see everybody next week. Thank you very much.